everyone. Welcome to At Home with Sally. I'm Sally Clarkson, and I have the biggest privilege in the world to be with so many friends from all over the world who join me every week to listen to my stories, inspiration, biblical encouragement, and I am just so glad that you're here today. Thanks so much for joining me. Hi, friends. I'm here finding myself as Sally Clarkson. I'm in my little office right now. It's actually it's my office when I am at my desk. It's my living room when I'm sitting at my couch. Anyway, I am so happy to be at Tea Time Tuesday. I think about this a lot. I sure hope you get something out of this today because I have been discombobulated. Maybe I should just not have done it today because I have Nathan and Keelia here. Sarah's going to try to come with her crew tomorrow, and Thomas and Joy is in and out. Joel is here. Clay and I are here, and we have my Bible study tonight, and I'm getting ready for that, and I just did a conference, and I'm kind of at that point of, oh my goodness. However, I just wanted to do a quick Tea Time Tuesday, and I hope it'll be of great encouragement to you. Now, the funny thing is, I'm saying here I want it to be of great encouragement to you, and guess what I'm talking about? I have on my mind today to talk about death and dying. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. We were out today all talking around at a bookstore that said, we have no more coffee. You can only order tea. And of course, all of mine were there hoping for coffee. It was one of those funny things. But anyway, I was talking to them and I said, I wish something that someone had taught me when I was first, just when I was a young adult, is that once you get married and then once you have children, and then once, even at the beginning, when you accept Christ, from that point on, your life is not your own. You need to be a person. There are all these incredible verses that I've been talking about lately, or I've been looking at lately. And one of the first verses, of course, is that unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains by itself alone. But if it falls into the ground and dies, it will bear much fruit. And so basically, Jesus says that he died for our sins. He gave his life for us. We have got to die to ourselves. And I realize that as I've been serving my kids this week and Clay and everybody else, that I think that a point of real redeeming in my life was when I finally realized, okay, there is no day timer that's going to make my children not have needs all the time, every day, not have surprise illnesses, not want to eat. There's no time I can say, okay, for the next week, you will all not eat. Or there's no time when I could say no one is allowed to get sick for a year. Or we are not going to move 19 times, 7 times internationally. I put my foot down. We are not going to fulfill our destiny as missionaries. No, Clay, you may not ever come talk to me when I'm having a quiet time because, I haven't had any time alone in the past 35,000 years. Anyway, I hope that you understand what I'm saying, but I think that sometimes we want permission to get out of the situation we're in, or we think if it's hard, it must not be God's will. But I think what I've realized is that in this, especially in a world that is filled with different voices and different messages that or many of them are unbiblical, as a follower of Christ, it is my forever until I see him face to face duty to serve other people, to encourage them, to bring the light of Christ. It is my service of worship to be a coach and an encourager to my children, and to be available to them, and to be patient with them as Christ is patient with me, and to wash their feet as Christ washed my feet. And to do that with my friends, regardless of their point of maturity, the people in my ministry, and to be patient with Clay, to give to him regardless of how spent I am. And so I'm not saying that we don't need to refuel and fill up. Yes, we need to do that, and I'll be talking about that in the next little while. But I have Joy on this particular podcast a little bit later today, and Joy is going to talk with us about what it looked like during the Middle Ages when people were dying of the plague. How do you prepare for death? And sometime years ago, I think when my kids were 5, 2.5, and 6 months, actually, I remember I was thinking, oh my goodness, if I could just organize myself better, if I could just find the right rule book, if I could just find whatever, then I'll tame my life more. Well, of course, you grow in your ability to order your life, to bring rhythms and routines, to organize better, to be able to cook more meals at once. You do grow. However, there was never going to be a book or a method or a rule system that would totally throw away any interruptions, throw away any difficulties. I couldn't find a book that told me your children do not have to go through all of the growing stages that everybody else does, because if you do this thing right, your kids will be mature right from 2 years old. Nope, never was going to be there. And yet another thing that I've really realized lately is, as I look at what's happening in Ukraine, as I look at all the negative things that are going on, I've realized that it is not God's will for me to live in such despair or in such discouragement that I'm not worldly good. And so I was looking up a couple of verses about this, and in Psalm 90, it's one of my favorite passages because I keep it at the forefront of my mind. And it says, "So teach us to number our days that we might present to you a heart of wisdom." Another version says, "Teach us to realize the brevity of life." Life is short. And some of the things that we are so worried about don't matter at all. But learning to self-restore, learning to put things into our schedules, learning to refresh, and that's what we're going to do today. You're going to get a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or a cup of something wonderful, and you're going to sit down for a few minutes, and you're going to take a deep breath in, and you're going to ponder with me, what does it look like to be a servant? Jesus said, "Greater love has no one than this, than one lay down their lives for their friend." So there are so many passages where he basically said, lay down your life, die to yourself, give up your rights, and then you'll understand me. And I was, as Nathan and I were giggling about it today, he said, it's so funny because he said, I know so many people who say, I want to have good abs. I want to have muscular arms. I want to have a flat stomach. I want to have all these things, but please don't make me have to go through the pain of exercising for many, many months on end, watching my diet so that I can have what I want. He said, I just want it. I don't want to have to go through the pain to get it. And I think that's what I did not know when I first became a wife or a mother or someone in ministry. I did not realize, oh my goodness, this is going to go on forever and ever, and there will be very few breaks, and I need to grow up, mature, and dedicate the rest of my life. There isn't going to be a time. It doesn't mean that we don't get to do things. I order my life so that I can restore self-restoration. Realizing that you need to take responsibility for your life is so very important. But the other thing is, I really believe that if I had known the cost of being a marathon mama, if I had known what it would be like, if I'd known there was no magic formula, if I'd known, no, keep going, be steadfast, immovable. If I'd known that my children would become best friends, would love the Lord. I was talking with someone in ministry today, a man that I respect a lot, that I work with sometimes in ministry situations. And we were just talking about the fact that it takes years and years to get to a point where you really are learning more and more to walk in the power of the Holy Spirit, to take things in stride. And he said, the thing that scares me the most is, he said, I meet with young men. There are a lot of students here all the time, and I hear stories all the time. And he said, there are as many people who grew up in Christian homes who absolutely threw the faith away as there are people who decided to believe in God. And he said, we need to push for those ways that we can actually pass on a legacy of faith. And that's what you and I are doing, my friends. We are going to roll up our sleeves and we are going to say, God, I'm understanding now this is a long life commitment, and it probably won't be over. There will not be people who don't need me until I get to heaven. But Lord, I'm your girl. Give me strength, give me wisdom, and help me to keep going. So dying to yourself. We're going to talk about death. When you die to yourself, that means all of your pettiness, your demands, your needs go away. You are putting them aside in order to serve someone else. Now, let me tell you, in my life, it's a process. In the same way that a baby has to grow from babyhood into full adulthood, that is the process of what we have to do. Oh my goodness, I have gotten, is your life like this? I have gotten, I think, 6 messages since I started this podcast. That's kind of my life right now. And 2/3 of them are my children. Anyway, I guess I just wanted to say that what God taught me when my children were, 4, 2.5, and 0, was that he said, give up, give in, enjoy your children, enjoy your story, make it a place of beauty, because this is what real life in a fallen world is going to be. And I'm going to use you to bring joy and goodness to your world. So give it up, the expectation of perfection. That will never happen. Now, I have to tell you that because I'm a strong feeler, sometimes when I really blow it or irritate one of my kids or, do something that's immature, even if I think it's justified, I just think, oh man, I just want to quit. Let me go to heaven right now. I don't think anyone's tried harder than me, Lord. I have given, I have served, and this is just hard. And then on top of that, for me to be petty and sin again? Oh my gosh, just give it up now, because I'm tired of people seeing the real me, that I'm weak. But anyway, so far I haven't been able to. But I just wanted you to feel understood. But I think that what we need to know, I also was looking at this verse. It's Revelation 21:4. It says, and he, Christ, will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Won't that be great? The old order of things has passed away, and there's someone else. So I love that. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. And then Psalm 147 verse 3 says, he heals the brokenhearted. He binds up their wounds. And so, my friends, that's what he's going to do for us. If we know we need to live well to die well, we need to do whatever we can now to build habits, rhythms, relationships into the warp and width of our lives so that we actually can leave a good and a faithful legacy. So I'm going to tell you a few things I've been doing this week. This is both yes, the reality is people die, accidents happen, children are sinful, mothers are sinful, Christians are sinful. And then the other part is we are part of God's redeeming when we die to ourselves. The more you die to yourself and learn little by little, give up your expectations, the freer you are to live in peace and to live in joy. And so I'm actually going to include you in what I'm doing right now because I've got my Bible study tonight. But I'm writing to Joel and Keelia, who are in the rest of the house. And I'm going to say to them, hey, somebody go make a salad. Go make a salad. Hey, who's that? I don't know who it is. How do you like being included in my life? Let me go see if I can find someone on her. Okay, here we go. Please go tear up the lettuce and make a salad, period. All right, now I get to be with you more now. All right, so I'm going to tell you just a few things that I've been thinking about this week. A joyful heart is good medicine. Proverbs 17:22. It's a good medicine for us when you can make your heart joyful for your friends, for your family. But then it says a broken spirit dries up the bones. So, my friends, how do we avoid a broken spirit when we're also learning to die to ourselves? It's kind of, you do this and you do that. First of all, I was reading all of these books and it talked about, and all of these articles online, and it said to be happy, you have to have friends. And it said having friends and community, cultivating a relationship with your family, with your children, is worth more than $100,000 a year. I don't know how they came up with that, but I'm going to take it. They just said that it is the only thing to say if you don't have relationships, you will eventually be unhealthy. And so make a friend, be a friend, join a group, go to an exercise club, start a book club, make a regular time when you drink a cup of tea online with a friend, or meet someone at a little tiny cafe once a week. Save enough money for coffee. You can do it. It's okay to spend time ministering to yourself. Come to a Bible study like mine because you really need to be happy. You really need to have relationships to be happy. We have one friend, a young man, who comes over to our house every single Thursday night for the past 2 years. We always invite others too, but we have him. Every single Friday night we go out to dinner for the sake of Sally. That just is something to look forward to. And oftentimes I get to decide where. Not every time, because Clay and I have very different tastes. Every Sunday afternoon, we have an open tea time for our children, our friends. I always have something very sweet and fun and special that day, like cinnamon rolls or crisp or whatever. And we put on music, light candles, and we drink tea together. We're friends. It's kind of something everybody looks forward to. Every Monday this year, and last year, I have my Bible study, but I have another friend who comes over for dinner before that. So there are enough people that I love and who love me in my life that I can get together with during the week that I know are at least committed to liking me. Okay, next, don't be afraid to have fun. Laugh, build Legos, dress up, go on a date, or go on a date with friends, girlfriends, dance to fun music. When I dance all over the house with fun music, I just put on loud music, loud, heavy beat music, and I dance, especially when it's raining and I can't go outside. But did you know that dancing and smiling create happy hormones? Focus on the positive. Be grateful every day. Thank God when you get up for at least 3 or 4 things. Smile, smile, smile. Smile really helps you. Did you know that even gathering a demeanor to say, I will be grateful, makes you grateful, and it helps your brain? Same thing with being positive. Don't live by guilt. Buy yourself something, even if it's small, flowers, a little candle, some cheap earrings, whatever it needs to be, or expensive if you're a millionaire. Do girly stuff. Joy absolutely loves it when we watch a girly movie and do facials that we just order offline. Buy yourself a piece of clothing, a scarf, a t-shirt, I don't know what, but just do some things that are just fun. okay, this is a thing I want you to do too. Like yourself. Decide ahead of time. Like yourself. I didn't like myself today because I kind of was grumpy at one point and I felt really guilty about it. I decided, oh, heck, maybe I'm making everybody else feel good because I'm not perfect. No, I'm teasing. Do at least 2 things a week to please your personality. If you're an introvert, have a one-woman tea time every day or 20 minutes where you read or journal. Travel. I like even just walking out the door and going to a new place, even if it's in town. Gas prices are high, but you can figure out some way to go someplace that'll be lots of fun. Do new things once in a while. It shakes up your brain. It shakes up your emotions. It's usually fun. And also, have one of your children give you a makeover. A few years ago, a couple of guys that are children of one of my friends said to their mom, they said, "Mom, it seems like a lot of these stay-at-home moms, sometimes homeschoolers, sometimes people who work, but a lot of times they have gotten off the fashion train at one particular stage in life that they liked, and they never got back on the fashion train again. They need to get back on the fashion train." So from time to time, I'll say, okay, so what should I be wearing? What shoes should I have? What do you think would be cute? And anyway, it's fun to do that with my kids. Okay, so read a book. There's a book that I love by Elizabeth Goudge that's called Pilgrim's Inn. It is my favorite Elizabeth Goudge book, but it's kind of about a story about the redeeming of a home in the midst of real life and the people there. But you'll like it. And every once in a while, I have an audiobook of Anne of Green Gables. And you know what? I just giggle at her all the time. I want to be her when I grow up. I do, of course, read more edgy books, but because I don't want criticism from any of you, I don't always tell you what I read, but, when I read books about war or about complicated things, sometimes people say you should never read anything that's not absolutely G-rated. And I think, well, life isn't G-rated, and I love historical books. Okay, so the other thing I read was that if you help someone 100 hours a year, it's a magical number. They say that you will automatically feel better about yourself. Ride in the mountains or wherever you are with music blaring and enjoy beauty. Anyway, I have to tell you, I did do some really fun thing this weekend, but it's a reason that I'm tired besides having my kids. I spoke at a small personal conference. There were only about 35 people there, which is small for me. And it was in this very large living room, these beautiful windows that looked out to some grassy, woody countryside. The clouds were spectacular this week. And anyway, I was sitting at my chair in front of these 35 women who were in a semicircle around me. And this room, I want you to know, I was probably, I think, in front of the fireplace. And there were 2 double doors, one on either side of me, where people could enter the room. Well, while I was at a very important point in my talk, this big Burmese dog, they're the Swiss mountain dogs, meandered in and started licking everyone and came over right in front of me and took the stage. And finally somebody shooed them away and got them out the door and closed the French doors. And then immediately on cue, another one came in the other door and came in the room and was just the cutest little, dog you've ever seen. And so I have to say, I've never been in a conference before where 2 Burmese mountain dogs interrupted and took the stage from me. So that was a fun time. Loved being with the women. Clay and I, every single night, some of you know this, we have at least one little piece of dark chocolate. And we like dark chocolate the best. I like, almost anything, but I like nuts in my dark chocolate. And one of my favorite new chocolate bars it's called Orange Lint Excellence Fine Dark Chocolate with Orange Juice. Orange, Lindt, Excellence Fine Dark Chocolate with Orange Juice and almond slivers. Okay, so I have a movie for you to watch, and I found out that one of my daughters-in-law thought that this movie was what it said, but it's not. It's called An Affair to Remember. If you really want an old-fashioned romantic show. It's Cary Grant and Deborah Kerr. And the affair in the old days was mainly that you had, you dated somebody for a while, or that you had a fling with somebody that you actually might have kissed. It wasn't the time when you slept with someone. But anyway, I remember watching it as a child, and I thought, that's the sweetest movie. So I hope you like it. Don't tell me if you don't. An affair to remember. Sometimes I sit outside and I put my earbuds in and I watch the sunset right from my bench. Okay, so there's another thing I was going to tell you about. My friend, I'll tell you that next week. I have to go make dinner. But smile, smile, smile. I just wanted to read this one song to you because it was really, it's a John Foreman song that Joy shared with me, and I can give you my best John Foreman imitation. I'm gonna miss you. I'm gonna miss you when you're gone. Okay, that's, he sings better than that, but he writes some beautiful music. And he said, she said, I love you. I'm gonna miss hearing your songs. So he said, I'm gonna miss you basically when you die. And I said, please don't talk about the end. Don't talk about how every living thing goes away. I'm not gonna sing anymore. She said, friend, all along thought I was learning how to take, how to bend and not how to break, how to laugh, not how to cry. But really, what I've been learning all along, I've been learning how to die. I've been learning how to die. Hey everyone, I've got nowhere to go. The grave is lazy. He takes our bodies slowly. And I said, please don't talk about the end. Don't talk about how every living thing goes away. And she said, friend, all along I thought I was learning how to take, how to bend, not how to break, how to laugh, not how to cry. But really, I've been learning how to die. I've been learning how to die. I've been learning how to die. And I kind of think that sums up what I have been doing in the past years of my life as I moved from immaturity to maturity. Little by little, gracious moment by gracious moment from my loving God, I've been learning how to open my hands and say, I'm yours. I will love this hurting child. I will love this difficult child through this difficult season. I will be patient with my husband whose back hurts. I'm learning how to die. So you will like this song. It's by John Foreman, and it's about learning how to die. All right, my friends, from this moment on, I think you're going to enjoy it because I have a little podcast with my precious daughter, Joy, whose PhD was about learning how to die. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Tea Time Tuesday. It's becoming one of my favorite things that I do. This is Sally Clarkson. It's becoming one of my favorite things because it seems like so many of you like it. It's kind of the busiest time in the world with wars and rumors of wars and issues and political things and life. And this is a time for you to get your cup of tea. I am immediately after I do this particular part of it going to get myself a very strong cup of tea. And I just want you to enjoy with me a little bit of time where we can think new thoughts and talk about favorite things. And I'm just enjoying sharing this with you so much. Today, and I mentioned this in my podcast yesterday, but I'm continuing my 2-part series on death and dying. As I laugh, that's a little bit weird, isn't it? But I think that as I look at my own life right now, oddly, in the past couple of years, we've had 10 people in our lives in one way or the other. A friend, a person at church, a neighbor, a colleague that have died. And it's been good for me again. I had written the book, Help I'm Drowning, which deals with a lot of the disappointments or the difficulties in life and death also. But I think that right now in my life, I'm thinking deeply about how oddly, when you face the possibility that you might die, when you face the idea, these terrible pictures that we're seeing in the Ukraine of many people dying and suffering, and literally all over the world in the past couple of years with the storms and everything else, I think that in order to be a person at peace in our Christianity, in our faith, we have to deal with the fact that this is not the ending place. This is not the place where we're going to find all of our fulfillment. And so I love a lot of the things that I've been looking at and studying. And I think that, in a sense, preparing ourselves, number one, for the fact that God deeply cares when we are sorrowful, or when we lose someone, or when we die, or when we're ill, whatever it is. I love this verse in Revelation 21:4. It says, He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. We are in the old order, my friends. And that is an assurance that we have, that God himself will wipe away our tears, that he cares for all that we're going through right now. Psalm 147 verse 3 says, He heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their wounds. And so today I am having one of my very favorite people in the world on, my sweet, precious Joy, my daughter Joy. Hi,
Hello,
Joy.
everybody.
And there's a reason you'll find out in a minute about why she's on. But I want to kind of start out, and I'll end with this in a minute or in a little bit. But Psalm 90 talks a little bit about the turmoil of life, and God, are you listening to us? And where are you? And are you angry at us and what's happening? But then it ends with, teach us to realize the brevity of life so that we may grow in wisdom. And I think today, part of what I want to say is we need to lighten up a little bit, in the sense of, you can't lighten up about death, right? No. We can lighten up about how deeply we care about some things that don't matter at all. And really thinking there will be an ending point. What legacy am I going to leave? But Joy, it's funny, it's kind of a little bit of a contrast. Joy's name is kind of a contrast to death. But I invited her here especially because when she finished her PhD recently, Dr. Joy, she has some pretty deep and essential thoughts about death that have really encouraged me as I've heard her explain them. So Joy, hello.
Hello.
And why did you focus as partially? Well, first of all, tell us what your PhD is, and tell us a little bit about why you decided to focus on death as a part of your PhD.
So I did my PhD at the Institute for Theology, Imagination, and the Arts, and my research for my thesis focused on how art can prepare us for death. So at the center of my kind of questions that I wanted to answer with my PhD was whether or not art could be a part of moral formation, if it could teach us to kind of shape our hearts, to shape what we loved, to orient our hearts towards good things. And the reason I picked death as something to look at with that is that the Christian tradition, it teaches us that, Christ rose from the dead, and that our lives are hidden with him, that death will not have the final word in our life. And so that would mean that we should have this kind of posture of hope towards death. But that's something we don't always naturally feel. I think most of us are afraid of death, whether that's our own death or other people. And so the reason I picked death when I was looking at art and whether or not art could shape our character was I wanted to say, could art help us form a posture of hope towards death? And I thought that's a particularly difficult thing to do. And so using art to see if it could do that would be something that would be kind of an interesting test case.
I think that's so important, because if we look at death as something unusual, and why did that happen, and why is this happening to that person, instead of saying, oh, in this world, the broken world, death was a part of the curse of being separated from the life of God. And we can't live well and gloriously, in a way, until we have kind of worked that through, because I think the world promises this is where you're going to be satisfied. This is where you're going to have everything you want, your dreams, your house, your car, whatever, your pleasurable experience. And I love what you said. And when you're talking about art, unpack that just a little bit. You're not just talking about
visual art.
Visual art.
So I mean that word expansively. I mean literature and music and theater. So when I say movies, I kind of mean anything aesthetic, right? Aesthetic means, things we experience with our senses, beauty. I mean all kind of forms of art. Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, when you said it's strange to laugh about death, I just got back from a conference, as you know, and I was presenting a paper, and I was actually talking about how we use humor, how humor can be used as a way to deal with death. Contrasting one theologian who writes about the fact that only Christians can really laugh at death because we have a sense of it not being final. So we can have an actual lightheartedness towards it. And you see that in Scripture, when Paul says, "Death, where is your sting?" He's kind of mocking it. He's making a joke at it, basically. Contrasting that with other ways of thinking about it. So
yeah, but that's true. That's really true. Well, I think that's amazing. And she does even look at several movies and several books and and I didn't realize, I thought there are a lot of movies in my life that really deal with the whole subject of death. And there's some of the most popular movies out there and books out there.
Yeah. And that's funny though, because what you were saying before is before we started recording this, is that the flip side of that is we have a really hard time talking about death.
Yeah. It's almost like we can lose ourselves in the movies or the books, and we can kind of interact with the characters because no one can see that private place in our heart.
Yeah. So we can kind of deal with a fear of death, sadness about it in the space of a movie because it's a little bit separated from our own experience. And so it's almost safe.
It's so true. Well, Joey has something very interesting to share with us today. And I learn something from her every time I'm with her. I love that she teaches me. It's so much fun. So tell us kind of what you wanted to share about preparing ourselves for death.
So there's so much I could share, but I thought I would kind of share a little bit about the tradition, because there's quite a lot of it actually, of in Christianity, of using art to help us accept and prepare for death and enter into a posture of hope. So one of the first things I want to talk about, I think there's two things I'll talk about. One is called memento mori, and I'll say what that means in a second. Okay. And then the ars moriendi. Now, memento mori means remember you must, or remember you will die. And this was
remember you will die.
Yeah. And this comes from really early in the church. It was just this kind of practice of doing exactly what Psalm 90 tells us, which is to number your days that you can present to God a heart of wisdom. And one of the ways this is depicted is in art is there's lots of paintings of saints. It's particularly Saint Jerome, who was responsible for translating the Bible into Latin, which was a really important thing at that point because the Roman Empire had taken over pretty much everything.
Is this the Vulgate?
The Vulgate. So Jerome translated the Latin Bible, which is the Vulgate, which meant that everyone had access to all these different countries. It was suddenly,
the first time.
Yeah, for the first time. And this was a really huge task. This was a really important task, and he felt that it was important that he do it. But in all the pictures of Jerome that you see, all the paintings, you'll often see him hard at work at a desk, translating. He has his quill out. And then you'll see a picture of a skull on the desk. And the story goes... What was that?
Maybe I should do that.
I know, I was about to find a skull. And the story goes that he kept his skull on his desk to practice memento mori, to remember that he would die. And this was a way of reminding himself that he was doing this important work, but that he only had so much time to do it. And also that he would be responsible to give an account of his life to God, that when he died, he would see God face to face, and he would have to kind of give an account of his life. And so even that little symbol in art is a really helpful thing, I think, for us in thinking about when we are doing the great tasks of our life, whether it is writing a great book, raising our children, whatever it is that we feel that God has put in front of us to do and to do well. How would remembering that we only have so much time to do that, and that we will ultimately come before God and be judged, not in the sense of condemned, but in the sense of we will have an evaluation of our life.
Our works will go before us.
Yeah, our works go before us. How might we live differently if we had a kind of continual awareness, if we brought that into our consciousness in a healthy way, not in a fearful way, just in a, this is a part of life. So that's one strand of art that kind of prepares people for death that you can see in a lot of visual art.
Joel and I were talking just last night, and he said, do you know, I kind of hope that someday all of the songs that I'm writing will be performed in heaven. Kind of the idea that art transcends life. Art gives a picture of what's real, of what's important.
If God is a creator, this is like, work. If God is a creator and we are made in the image of God, then creating, Joel's act of creativity is a way of reflecting God's image. And,
which kind of goes like what you're saying, to think about what it is we're leaving.
Yes. And to think about
the works matter.
Yeah. And to think that my days are numbered. So how will I live them well?
Yeah.
Now there's another, this is like a constellation of artwork. So they started as visual, but they also actually didn't really start as visual. It started in this poem called the Psychomachia by Prudentius, who is a 4th century Roman Christian. And the Psychomachia means the battle for the soul. And that was actually not about death specifically. It was about this Christian soul and all of the vices that come his way. And he learns to have virtues that battle with the vices. So he befriends humility, which helps him battle pride and all this stuff. So this comes up later when the second kind of art that I wanted to talk about is the ars moriendi, and that means the art of death. And the ars moriendi came to prominence during the period of the plagues. So, we have just endured our own pandemic, but it was kind of nothing compared to the plagues in the Middle Ages. In the Middle Ages, you had sometimes up to 50% of towns would be wiped out.
Oh my goodness!
And sometimes 80%.
Wow,
and
that's incredible.
In really extreme places. And there's a book called Loris, which is this novel about medieval Russia, and he kind of captures that sense of you would just walk by a house and the whole of the house would have perished from the plague, and the only way, and so the church kind of faced this pastoral crisis because they said, we're meant to guide people, to shepherd people, to pasture them through life. And right now, the big issue that's happening is this just vast amounts of suffering and death. And they wanted to be able to help their congregants. But the problem is that when you have 50% of the town dying, that sometimes means your priests
are all gone.
Yeah. Are all gone. And
this happened to the doctors here during
exactly.
COVID. Yeah.
And also there was a problem of infection. So the thing that they came up with was the ars moriendi, which was there was these wood prints, these woodcuts. So it was right when you're kind of getting in the early printing era. And it was illustrations of a man preparing to die. And it kind of combines some of the imagery, I think, of the Psychomachia. So you have this man and he's going to die, and he has these visual depictions of vices that might attack him. So when you think about death, you might be tempted to despair. And so you'd have some kind of depiction of despair, like a really sad thing. And then, and there was writing that went with this. So you had these illustrations, and then you could read the writing, and then hope would come and remind him of the fact that Christ had redeemed his soul, and hope would battle despair in these images to help him think about that. And it was a really systematic way. I think that there were things like pride or sloth or all these different things.
Interesting.
And the point was that it was this kind of fascinating, sometimes almost funny, illustration of these are the different things you might be tempted to feel when you think about death or when you approach your own death. You might feel despairing. You might be prideful. You might be tempted to kind of just not do anything. But here's how you can move past that. So it was a story, and it was images.
Kind of a visual representation of what they needed to think about and do, how they could melt up over it.
Exactly. It was a visual depiction of the Psychomachia, of the battle for the soul. And then that was actually also, I'm probably, any historian would probably be issuing lots of caveats, but that also took place in what were called morality plays. So, and those were actually plays. So they were things you would go and watch. And in those, you would have a man who death would visit. He would say, I'm going to come get you, but I'm not going to get you yet. And then the man would have kind of a time to think about, well, how can I be ready when death comes for me finally? Will my soul will I be strong? Will I be ready to greet death? Will I not? And then you have him kind of going through these processes of encountering, again, all those different vices and despairs. And the fun thing about the plays were some of them. So like, there's one that's famous called The Everyman. And so this Everyman is the picture of all of us getting ready to face our own death. And that one's quite somber and it's very kind of serious. And you have all of the friends coming alongside him and praying for death. But then you have like really funny ones again. And part of it's kind of, they're trying to make you take yourself less serious. They're kind of going, you're going to die.
That's what the rest of our podcast is about.
It's going, there's like two sides of it. One side of it is you're going to die. You should live a very good life. And the other side of it is, you're just a speck. Like,
so true.
Rely on God's grace and let the virtues fight for you. And the fun thing I always like to tell people too is that this story and this kind of literary theatrical mode is found in many modern stories as well, in ways that you might not expect. But,
like what?
Like Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would apologize for ruining this for everyone, but it has been out for 20 years. So Harry Potter is visited by death as a little boy. He has a death curse cast on him. That he's protected because of the sacrificial love of his mother. But you have this prophecy that says, neither can live while the other remains. So the whole series, you're waiting to see if Harry will die. Voldemort, and Voldemort is, of course, a picture of death. He's literally kind of dressed like the Grim Reaper. Mm-hmm. So there's this sense that Harry's been visited once by death, and he kind of has this warning of, will you be prepared when death comes for you again? And through the example of his mother, who is this picture of love, through all these different people, he learns how to have love, how to have hope, how to not despair, how to give your life for others, so that when he greets Voldemort, this embodiment of death, he's ready. He is not the everyman caught unaware, but he is the one who has acquired the virtues necessary to as he says in the book, greet death as a friend.
Well, that's so interesting. And I when I look at those themes, I remember I was actually Nathan was 19 and he said, I want to read a book with you again this summer, Mom, in between my job. And of course he wanted to read the last book. Oh my goodness. My tears were running down my face. I mean, to see I'm not going to
spoil it.
Well, I'm not going to totally spoil it, but just the whole idea of preparing, to give our lives.
And that there is such a thing.
That there's an honor and courage in giving our lives for others and not allowing death to rule over our fear. It is going to happen. It is going to happen to everyone. But it is also something that makes life more precious when we understand it and live life well now. To not be so serious about things we can't change, or to be so worried about something today when next week something worse is going to happen. That's a little bit of backwards encouragement.
Yeah, but I'm going to say one last thing, which is that I think that show presents the idea, or that book series presents the idea, which we've held for a long time in the Christian tradition, which is that there's such a thing as a good and a bad death. So one of the things that's interesting in Harry Potter is you have this tussle between death as a friend and death as an enemy. So he greets death as a friend. That's a part of the story. But on his parents' tomb is the verse, the last enemy to be destroyed is death. So there's a sense that, what Jesus conquers is death. Death is an enemy to be conquered. But for those of us who have our lives hidden in Christ, who death is not an enemy. Death is nothing we have to be afraid of because
it's kind of a graduation. It's passing from the fallen, the place of battle, the place of darkness, into where it says Jesus is going to light up the world, so that there won't even
need a sun
for light.
And so something I think about, and this probably seems kind of morose to some people, but I often pray for all of our family that we will all have good deaths, that there will be a sense that whatever they are, that we will be prepared for them, that we will have been virtuous and loving, and that we will not be afraid.
That is so great.
Sorry, there's your profound thing for the day.
You whose mother has been talking about death your whole life.
Indeed.
Well, anyway, thank you so much. And I do hope, my friends, that you will find some reason to see why teacups and tea times can actually be enhanced by this discussion about death. Thanks for joining me today, Joy. I hope you've enjoyed our time together today and that you'll join me next week. Be sure to look for more inspiration on my blog at sallyclarkson.com. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.